Hello everybody, this is AJ and this is an update for the Fungus video, which you probably just watched if you were watching this. Okay, so this is the painted end product of the Fungus clumps that I was making. I just had a base coat of like a brown on the bottom here. I just paint all of this stuff is pretty much just like one layer of paint right onto the white Sculpey. Um, and this is my favorite one, I think, because I really like this bumpy texture. So I went ahead and made a couple more which are more, notice how this one's sort of spread out more with lots of holes through it and overhangs and things like that, whereas this one is more clustered together. And I did this expressly for I'm going to cast molds of this one and a slightly smaller clump, this one here, and they should turn out to look a lot like this one here. And I have an ulterior motive for doing this, which is I'm going to use these as a sort of a terrain concealment for these little critters which are in construction here, which you probably won't recognize. These little holes around the top of the head are going to have little eye stalks, so they look almost beholder-like. And they've got a mouth in the front, a very round sort of soccer ball body, which is about 3 foot wide, and they've got these clawed feet. And they're from the Fiend Folio, and they're called Gorbels, um, which I'm going to be converting into. First, I'm going to be using them in Fantasy Age rules, but I'm probably going to make a video later on where I convert the original monster into 5th edition stats. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. We're here to talk about the painting of these fungi. Okay, so this is one of the clumps of fungus that's all kind of the same, and I made this one as a demonstration of how they sort of go from the younger um, little blobby bits of fungus. I'll try and get that in focus. And then as they mature, they get these bigger caps. And if you look really closely at the paint job, you'll see that I've got a base light blue, and then darker in the middle of the cap as it goes to a peak, and it's sort of tanned on top. And it'll be darker on the side which faces more sort of light, and then lighter on the side sort of to the underside. And the frilly skirts underneath there, I've painted a sort of a lurid green, and the cilia on the bottom is pretty much just like a corpse greeny grey. This is the one that I made while you guys were watching the film, with the jawbone and the sort of, it looks like almost like a blood red kelp. And again, I just went with the blue, classic sort of fungus blue for those caps with a dark middle peak. And I didn't paint the skirts green on this one. So the mycelium fibers themselves, you don't really need to worry a lot about it. You could probably just get away with doing a wash of some ink, like I did with these teeth here, was basically just a wash over top of a bone pigment paint. And let's see, this one here has got these, I put more of a tone on the stalks because the stalks were quite prominent, so it's darker up the top and lighter down the bottom. Usually it's around the other way, where it'll be darker down the bottom and lighter up the trunk, much like the caps. But I thought there was nice contrast there. It almost looks like it's glowing blue in certain light. Let's see, sort of reflects a little bit. And this stuff here made a nice contrasting bright sort of orange, and I thought that was quite a distinctive feature. If I was going to put any other tone there, it would be a dark red at the base of these stalks. maybe as a wash or red wash. Talking of red, I went with a blood red for this one. Give them a sort of a gory look. And again, very lurid, sort of sticky look. Normally I use a matte varnish, but for these I used a high gloss varnish, which I almost never do, so they really look quite wet and slick. And I left other bits matte, which includes this spongy little, almost looks like a sea sponge. But you do find fungus like this in nature, where the spores sort of rise from these bits in the middle. And yeah, there's that one. This was a more sort of drab, what real world fungus in a cave probably looks like, with less muted colours and stuff, and a conglomeration of different types of fungus all together, again with that dark splodge in the middle of the cap, and just some sort of, an imperfect sort of splodgy, almost diseased look to some of it. And there'll be the white mycelium with darker bits over top. See, it's kind of scaly. I did that with just like pushing the little bumps in. So I basically just rolled lots of little balls and then rolled the stalk across it and then stuck it on there. Whereas with these ones, I placed them all. And finally, there's this one here. So this is my approximation of trying to make some icky water with a bug crawling out of it, like a big water bug. Bear in mind that thing's the size of a corgi. And all of the fungus is kind of the same, just that sort of green, creamy green, with a dark cap on and dark peak in the middle. And the water is simply just clear epoxy resin, 2-part epoxy resin, with a tiny bit of the same green that you see here added to it. By tiny bit, I mean if you take your paintbrush, say, and just dab it once, boop, like that, and then scrape it off with a toothpick, and then put that in the glue, and then mix it around. That's plenty of pigment. You really don't need a lot to add quite a lot of murkiness, opaqueness to that water, goo, slime. It's a really great way to make green slime and stuff like that as well. You can make pretty much anything. You can also use hot glue if you heat it up a lot. You can sort of melt the hot glue into there in a big stream, and if the Sculpey is hot enough, it'll probably just spread out naturally like that, and you can add a bit of pigment, maybe. I don't know, I haven't really tried that out. So with these ones, I'll just talk about how I do the painting. So I start off by putting the, I work from the bottom up, and I work from the most inside segments first. So the stalks here are just a green wash, sorry, a purple wash, and that's using Army Painter's, what did I use? Purple Tone. Purple Tone. And I'll just show you what that's like. This is. I can scrape all this paint off, but I want to show you what a dry palette looks like after a while. That's after like one session of painting fungus. Blech. Quite a bit actually. And let's grab my regular size brush. Straight in there. And you just basically just brush it on quite thick. Oops, sorry, I'll try getting in camera. Terrible at that. So yeah, and that's going to come out fairly even because there's not a lot of texture on those stalks. And the reason why you do that first is because it's basically going to go everywhere. It's going to, your brush is going to hit a lot of things as you're poking it into those deep recesses. It's going to go on these caps and stuff. So you're going to end up painting over top of this and around it. And with this ink wash, you'll probably put a couple of layers on there, a couple of coats. And although I'm using a fairly good brush for this, you can use a rough brush, because jamming it in like that is going to bend the bristles back, which is really, brushes don't like that at all. One of the tricks with good brush work is you never really use the tip of the brush, you just sort of scrape it across, like from the side. Never like dab, 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 because it'll make little frays in the tip of the brush, which cause it lose its fineness. If you look after a brush, they go quite a long time, but I mean, like anything, when you're dragging fibers across a rough surface like this, it's going to wear on them. And it's pretty much the same with anything. Plastics, like with the bones, miniatures and things like that, they're not very rough, so your brushes can last for a very long time. And again, if you're using a base coat of paint, priming them, that just basically makes a smooth palette that the brushes are going to be able to draw across. Your paint will be applied to a more even surface, so you won't get dark and light sections of it just because of the texture of the surface. So that's one advantage. It just gives you a more even, predictable surface. And also, the base coat is designed to adhere very strongly to the underground material, the original material, I should say, the original surface. So that if you're applying light coats of paint, light coats of pigment, the thinness of it doesn't necessarily affect the durability of the paint job that you're applying. So there's many advantages to putting a base coat on. Of course, with the bones miniatures, you don't technically need to do any priming. Some people do, some people don't. I don't. Maybe I should, I don't know. I just find it tiresome to prime something when I could just use a material that makes it relatively easy. As I say, I'm going to be making a cast of this, but it shouldn't affect my paint job overly much. And to do the cast, I'm going to be using the best product that I've found so far. Well, it's the best product for me, which is, I've actually got the camera rested on the pots of it. It's called Amazing Mold Putty. That's the brand. It's its product name, Amazing Mold Putty, and it's a two-part. You mix it up like a two-part epoxy almost. So 2 equal parts mixed together, like sort of Play-Doh, and then it hardens by itself quite rapidly and forms this rubber, which is like a silicon rubber. And because it's silicon, almost nothing sticks to this. And also it's very heat resistant, so you can make duplicates of material you can put green stuff in there. Green stuff will not stick to it, so you can pull that out quite easily. Also Sculpey, you can bake Sculpey inside it, so it will come out pretty much perfect. Although the Sculpey with really small things like the feet of a miniature, for instance, Sculpey is not durable enough and not strong enough to withstand a lot of pressure on there, so they'll quite often snap off if you're not too careful. So green stuff is probably better for very, very fine work, because green stuff is flexible and strong enough. It bonds well enough with itself to withstand that sort of duress. But yeah, you can make all sorts of stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make molds of these, and I can either cast them in plaster, or I could pack them full of Sculpey, or I could even make casts with green stuff if I wanted to, although that would be a tremendous waste. Yeah, so I'll probably do them in dental plaster mixed with a little bit of white glue. So you mix a little portion of craft glue, this is ordinary, just wood glue, to a mix of dental plaster, which is just basically plaster of Paris, but it's stronger, denser, and it makes quite durable stuff, which I can then just paint up quite easily. Yeah. So you can see that the ink wash there is just run off down the bottom. That's another reason why you put that on first, because I'm just going to paint straight over top of that. And yeah, that's pretty good for the base of those stalks. It's dark where it needs to be dark. It's relatively light where it needs to be relatively light. And I can just brush on some purple paint to add a little bit of luster, depth and character to that. So it's running down my hand. Oh, it's a filthy business. Yeah, so that's fine. With the base, it's basically just going to be brown, mixed with a little bit of light brown. And with the caps, it's going to be a pure red, which will then have some of this stuff mixed over top of it, which is Citadel Blood for the Blood God. It's a glossy stuff that looks exactly like fresh blood when you put it on things. Where's a good example of that? Here we go. So you apply it to weapons and things like that, and it basically looks like wet blood all the time. See, it's got that gloss, that glittery gloss, and it makes wounds look really, really good. Come on, focus. Makes wounds and things look really good. Oh, there we go. Snap. Skinned knees. He looks like he's been in the wars. Punched the crap out of somebody. Yeah. And when you apply it to something like this, it really makes it look wet and slick, like fresh meat. So yeah, it just added to that. And then over top of that, I just had a straight, what was it? No, it wasn't that one. It was, I've got a lot of paints here. It was, no, wasn't that one. Could have been that one. Mayhap, maybe. Fireball orange, maybe. Oh, no. It was this one. Lava orange. Yeah. Lava orange. That's the same color that I used on that. So yeah, and it made those contrast on red, which is really hard to do sometimes, particularly when you're doing that. So it's contrasted but a complementary color. So if I really wanted to make it garish, I would have put green or something like that on there. But a more complementary color would be an orange, or possibly brown, or yellow. So yeah, with that, so yeah, they look suitably good, and you notice how much they stand out compared to the blue ones at the base there. But they blend nicely with that purple, with the texture to make it. I imagine that the spores came out of the stalks as it was growing up, and they just sort of puffed out. And that's a pattern that you quite often see in nature, with fungus having a honeycomb texture to their stalks. So yeah, and that's essentially how I do it. And then, of course, I just added a high gloss ard coat, gloss varnish. Yeah, ard coat. Can you focus? There we go. Gloss varnish. Is that Citadel? I believe it is. Games Workshop. Boy, that's an old one. Citadel. That's one of the really old ones. It's so old. I usually, since I so rarely use gloss varnish, I was actually just using this. That's old blue tack from sticking miniatures to that so that I could paint them without straining my hand. If you do find yourself getting a sore hand, best tip I heard from Brad Smith. Thank you, Brad. Was stick a bit of blue tack or something on there and stick your miniature to it, and that way you're just moving it around in your fingers like that instead of gripping that little base, which gets really hard on your hand. So yeah, if you hold on to a much larger thing, it's a much easier way to manipulate your miniature around without having to strain your hand, because you hang on to it for a long time when you're painting. Okay, and yeah, I just use one of these sort of snap lock M&M containers for my water. Having that handy means I can just have the water on my desk without any risk of it spilling when I'm not using it. I might knock it, but it won't slosh everywhere, and it's got a lovely heavy face on it. Yeah, thanks M&M. Recycle, everybody. Yeah, so that's it. I hope that's useful to you. There are much better painters out there than me, for sure, but that's how I did these. And I thought I'd do a different variety of them just to show you different ways of doing things. But I have no doubt that other people come up with much better paint jobs than me, and much more innovative and interesting designs. But I thought these are nice and simple things that people can do, and I'm happy to share. So yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. I hope that was satisfactory for your update on the fungus. And yeah, if you have anything other sort of, if you have any requests of stuff for me to sculpt, I'll be interested in hearing your opinions. I can't guarantee that I will, since sculpting is, I don't know, it's not something sometimes I take requests for stuff, but normally I just do whatever I want. It's a very individual motivation, sculpting. I guess like painting pictures and things. So yeah, there we go. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.